ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भुरिदा जनाः. So we were discussing, we had just started discussing chapter 1 of section 9 of the second volume of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And the subheading, the main heading is Sri Ramakrishna in the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar. And the subheading of chapter 1 is distinction between a learned man and a sadhu. And then the second topic under the same heading is Bhakti according to Narada, enjoined for the age of Kali Yuga. For Kali Yuga, Narada Bhakti is more suitable. That is what Sri Ramakrishna used to always say. So the date on this particular day on which the conversation took place was a Wednesday, 26 September 1883. And M writes that it was the 10th day of the dark fortnight of the month of Bhadra. Bhadrapad, as it is known. Fewer devotees visit Sri Ramakrishna on Wednesday since it is a working day. So normally Saturday, Sundays, if you see, a lot of people would assemble. But on working days, only a few close devotees would come. And for Thursdays, sometimes Sri Ramakrishna used to deliberately ask his all-renouncing young disciples to come, because he knew he had to give them some kind of separate guidance or spiritual advice to mold their life in a slightly different way than that of householders. So on such days, he was in a different mood. So Wednesday, it is a working day, so it's not very common. Usually the devotees come on Sundays when they are at leisure. Free at 1:30 in the afternoon, M somehow manages to get leave from his school, and the first available opportunity, though he is working, if he is free on a particular weekday, he prefers, because that is when he can ask or enjoy the company of Sri Ramakrishna, which when there is less crowd. So somehow he has managed to make himself free from the school at 1:30 and reaches Kali temple to see Thakur at 3 o'clock. So after being free at 1:30, he somehow managed to travel and arrive at Dakshineshwar. And these days, in 83, Rakhal and Latu are staying with Thakur most of the time. So they had more or less permanently come to stay with him. Other young disciples, they had some domestic problems, especially Swamiji and all. And Swamiji, though he wanted to come and stay, Naren, Swamiji, Thakur had told him that as long as I'm alive, you don't leave your home. You come, but you don't leave your home permanently. Later on, I think he had some other plans in mind. And because Naren's family was undergoing some financial and legal crisis, he perhaps encouraged Naren to just stay for his sake. He said, at least for my sake, you stay. Naren was keen to leave the house and come and stay with Sri Ramakrishna permanently, because he knew he wanted his company so badly. But Rakhal and Latu was of course free. He had already, his Ramchandra Datta had already made him free, because he was, as you all know, Latu was working as a servant boy in their home under Ramchandra Datta's house. So he was made free to serve Thakur, and Latu was permanently staying with Thakur most of the time. Sometimes now and then he used to go if he had some work. Thakur is seated on a smaller cot in his room as usual, and on arriving, M prostrates himself before him. After making polite inquiries, Thakur talks of Naren. So Sri Ramakrishna is asking M, well, did you meet Narendra? Then he laughs. He commented that I still visit the Kali temple, but when I am cured of my madness, I will no longer go there. I mean, Thakur is saying, Naren jokingly says, I still visit the Kali temple, but when I'm cured of my madness, I will no longer go there. I mean, it in a very light way, Naren used to make fun. So then he says, he comes here off and on. He tells me that the members of his family are very cross with him. Naturally, his father has died. And the other day he came in a carriage. Surendra had paid the carriage fare. So Narendra's aunt, his father's sister, went to Surendra's house to protest. And she created a big row. They did not even tolerate other people because they knew that Narendra normally had to walk and go. So if some devotee helps him by arranging for his carriage, and Sri Ramakrishna did not have any hesitation to ask other devotees to bring Naren. Somehow he wanted him to frequent Dakshineshwar. So, and he had even told Naren that for your sake I can even beg from door to door. He knew he was facing a lot of financial problems and he could not definitely afford to come in a carriage. So even if he got little time, because he had to fight legal battles, his own relatives after his father's death were trying to deprive his mother and other brothers and sisters and uh, drive them out from their own home. So some legal battle, of course, Naren won that battle before he left his home. But somehow he could not frequent. And Thakur was so keen that he could come at the earliest opportunity. He used to tell now and then, tell Surendra and others who could afford carriage hire to either sponsor a carriage for him or bring him when they come. So Naren's aunt, that is father's sister, was very attached to him. She went to Surendra's house to protest, said, you are sending him carriage, he is neglecting. They are very cross. They were very cross. They thought he is neglecting his family and getting attracted to Sri Ramakrishna and going there very often. While talking of Narendra, Thakur stands up. Now, when he heard this, as he was speaking up, he became rather animated. He goes to the northwestern veranda and stands there. Northwestern veranda is from where Naren first came in. So Hajra, Kishori, Rakhal and other devotees are there. It is afternoon. Then Sri Ramakrishna is asking M, how is it that you are here today? He didn't expect M to come on a Wednesday because he knew he was working in a school and normally they did not have a holiday on Wednesday. M says, today the school closed at 1:30. Then Sri Ramakrishna asked, why so early? He says, Vidyasagar owns this school. This school actually was started by Vidyasagar himself. So whenever he visits, the boys are given a holiday to celebrate. So the day he visits his own school, as a mark of respect for him, all the children, after his visit is over, they are just allowed to go home. So it's a big occasion because he could not perhaps go regularly. So whenever he came, it was like a big celebration. Then Sri Ramakrishna, though he heard that Vidyasagar has started a school and he has employed M. In fact, he also asked Naren if he was in search of a job when his financial condition was bad. And Naren could not even if he got a job in Vidyasagar school, he was removed because some of the students complained that he was not teaching properly, which was not the case. There was some jealousy and some rival teacher or somebody wanted to get their people, they wanted them to get a job. So Naren was very upset because such a complaint, because he was a sincere teacher. He took up some teaching job and perhaps Vidyasagar also had to tell him to leave because the students, apparently some of them complained and they were not very happy, or maybe they wanted him to go. Anyway, Vidyasagar had this school where Master Mashe worked for some time before he changed his school. And Sri Ramakrishna is a little upset with him because he says, why doesn't Vidyasagar keep his word? Holding on to truth and viewing other women as mother, Tulsi is a liar if you do not realize Hari by this means. Means what Tulsidas says, there are two conditions to realize God. If you want to realize God, one, you have to hold on to truth and view all other women as your mother. I mean, you should be, these are the two things. And Tulsi says that if one strictly follows this and holding on to truth and not even lie, even by mistake, holding on to truth and viewing other women as mother. So practicing brahmacharya. So if you stick to truth, you can attain Bhagwan. The other day, Vidyasagar said that he would come here, but he did not show up. So Thakur was upset. He says, if you can't come, you say, I can't come, but don't give a word and break that promise. If you can't come, you just say, I may try. Even when Naren said that I will come, Sri Ramakrishna said, don't say I will come. What if you are not able to come? Say, I will try to come. So he was very particular. He did not want anybody to even casually tell an untruth. So then he says there is a great difference between a learned man and a sadhu. Means he was perhaps indicating that Vidyasagar is a genuinely scholarly person and a great scholar, no doubt, and people respect him for his charity and his wonderful qualities of the heart. But that doesn't mean he is a sadhu. A mind of one who is a mere scholar remains attached to Kamini and Kanchan, lust and gold, while the mind of a sadhu remains tied to the lotus feet of Hari. The learned man says one thing and does another. Leaving sadhus aside, even those whose minds are fixed on the lotus feet of Hari are very different in their actions and words. I saw a young sadhu belonging to the sect of Nanak in Kashi. He was the same age as you. So he would call me a premi, a loving sadhu. His monastery is in Kashi. One day, he invited me there. The head monk of the monastery was no different from a housewife. I asked him, what is the way? He replied, Bhakti according to Narada is enjoined for the age of Kali. In this Kali Yuga, Bhakti is the best way. Then he said something very significant. This sadhu belonged to the sect of Nanak. He was saying that Vishnu is in water, Vishnu is on land, Vishnu on the hilltop, Vishnu pervades the whole world. And he ended with peace, peace, perfect peace, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So when this monk who belonged to the sect of Nanak, now Sri Ramakrishna is recollecting this. His monastery was in Kashi, but he was a very, very loving monk. And perhaps he followed the path of bhakti. That is why he would see his Ishta, Vishnu, everywhere, in water, on land, on hilltop, and pervades the whole world. And he ended with peace, peace, perfect peace. Observance of Vedic rites, not for this age of Kali, the path of Jnana. One day, he was reading the Gita. He was so strict in his orthodoxy that he would not read it looking at a worldly man. Now, this Bhakta who belonged to the Nanak sect, he was a sadhu, but he had his own fancies, or not fancies, you cannot say. It is some kind of rules he had made for himself. It was an orthodox monk. So he said, I will not read Gita if worldly people are present there. Mathur Babu was present. He was such a big man. The sadhu turned his back on him while reading. So he didn't care whether a person is rich or poor. He said, I have a habit where when I read the Gita, I don't want to look at a worldly person. That is what this sadhu sect, the sadhu turned his back on him while reading. It was the same sadhu of the sect of Nanak who said, there is a way in this Kali Yuga, it is the path of devotion as enjoined by Narada. So Thakur is trying to recollect what happened in Banaras. And he saw this sadhu and he saw it was rather strange that he would not read Gita in the presence of householders and turn his back and read. If some householder happened to be there, like Mathur Babu. But he liked Sri Ram Krishna and said, you are a premi, you are a man of God, you love God. M asked this question, aren't these sadhus Vedantists? Then Sri Ram Krishna says, yes, these people are Vedantists, but they also believe in the path of bhakti. The fact is that in this age of Kali, it is very difficult to observe Vedic rites and rituals. A person said that he would observe the Purascharana of the Gayatri mantra. The Purascharana means you have to do it for a fixed number of times. Some certain number of times each day, methodically increasing and decreasing the amount. So they have these different rules. When the Amavasya approaches, you have to do more. And then slowly every day of the week after that, you have to decrease and then again increase. So there are many different ways of repeating the Gayatri mantra, and it is known as Purascharana. So Purascharana means take a sankalpa that I will do so much today, I will increase, like we are told by our guru to do. You start with 108 times, then you do go on doing it for a long time, then you do multiples if possible, slowly increase it. So also the Gayatri mantra, those who formally do the Purascharana of Gayatri mantra, they have to increase it gradually. There is a system of increasing and decreasing again. It depends on the movement of the moon and the Amavasya, the Purnima. There are certain rules, and these are based on the Vedas. But I asked why for the age of Kali you have the tantric path. Can you not perform Purascharana according to Tantra? Sri Ram Krishna says that I asked him, why should we follow these Vedic rituals? There are other paths also, like Tantras. Vedic observances are very difficult to perform. Basically, that is why they prohibit sannyasins from performing any Vedic ritual, because Vedic rituals were primarily designed for householders, and in those days householders had to perform this as an obligate nitya karma. They had to do it, like Sandhya Vandana, doing Gayatri, and it became part and parcel of their lives. But after the spread of this idea of Tantra, where God is considered to be one's mother, then one doesn't have to practice this observance. Tantra, the path of Tantra is slightly different and more liberal also. That is why Thakur says Vedic observances are very difficult to perform. These days, one slaves for others, like the British masters. I mean, he realized that every householder devotee who was mostly coming, they were employed by the British. And the British system of work was to extract the maximum hours of work from somebody. So it is said that if you slave like this for 12 years, you acquire the habits of your master, I mean the British people. So you imbibe the qualities of those for whom you have been slaving for so long. You take on their rajas and tamas and other qualities like violence and indulge in sense pleasures while you serve them. Not only are you their slave, but you also receive a pension from them. So this is typical of Sri Ramakrishna. He somehow used to sometimes make fun that you people are not free, in the sense you have certain things which are imposed to you by society, and because you are householders, you cannot get away or get rid of that, and you have to follow those things. So a Vedanti sadhu visited here. He danced to see the clouds and thoroughly enjoyed himself when there was a rainstorm. If anybody approached him while he was meditating, he would get very angry. One day I went to him. Oh, how upset he was. He always discriminated. Brahman is the only reality and the world is an illusion. So this Vedanti sadhu, he was a lover of nature. He danced to see the clouds and thoroughly enjoyed himself when there was a rainstorm. So he had a strange habit. He if anybody approached him when he was meditating, he would get very angry. So you see these peculiarities, one may think it is a strange thing that why should somebody get upset and why should one love nature? It is very difficult to understand. Some people simply love the company of natural phenomena like rain and clouds, and some such sadhus used to come who had no attachment to the world, but somehow they were attached to their sadhana and the surroundings. Especially some of them who came, they danced to see the clouds, and if somebody disturbed him when he was meditating, they would get angry. One day I went to him, how upset he was. He always discriminated. Brahman is the only reality and the world an illusion. The appearance of so many different forms is because of Maya. So he carried a prism from a chandelier with him. Through a prism, you see many different colors. In fact, there is no color at all. In the same way, there is really nothing but Brahman. You see, even the idea of a prism, the prism apparently shows a lot of color, but that is only, but the fact is the white light is passing through the prism and the white light divides itself into different color, but the light is one. So this sadhu, this Vedanti sadhu, who always believed, he had a strange belief and he kept this prism with him just to always remind himself of the unity. The diversity, of course, different colors are seen, but for that reason, we should not forget that it is the white light which gets divided into different colors. So, in fact, there is no color. When the original light strikes the prism, it is pure white light or colorless light, you can say. It's just colorless light. But when it passes through the prism, because it gets divided into different colors and you see the appearance of different colors, the different 7 colors they say, VIB, GY, yellow, orange and red, so many colors. So he used to remind himself, that is his way of sadhana, lest he should be caught in the maya of different colors. He kept a prism and kept looking at it now and then, just to remind him, remember, from Brahman has come this whole world. Because of Maya and ego, one sees a diversity of things. Lest he should become infatuated and become attached to it, this sadhu, this Vedantic sadhu, who practiced the Jnana Marga, would not look at anything more than once. He always kept moving. While taking his bath, he would discriminate at the sight of birds flying overhead. Together, we would go to ease ourselves. When he heard that it was a pond of a Muslim, he did not use its water. So he had his own fanaticism, but because of his sincerity, Thakur mentions this and he respected him also. So Haladhari tested him in grammar. He knew grammar. They talked of consonants. He was here for 3 days. One day, 3 days means he was afraid that if I stay in a place for a long time, I'll get attached. So he used to keep moving. Sri Ramakrishna is just explaining how many different varieties of Gyanis he came across. Perhaps he wants to say that the path of bhakti is much easier. Imagine keeping a prism and always trying to remember. People will think he is mad, but he has had his own logic. He said, why should I be attracted by diversity if I know everything has come from unity? So to remind that, he used to keep that prism. But he knew not that he was an ignorant monk. He was a very well-read monk. So they talked for 3 days. He stayed here. And then naturally, when he found that he will get attached to this place, he left. One day, hearing the sound of Shahnai, Shahnai means a instrument. It's something like a pipe. So he said, one who has realized Brahman goes into samadhi hearing such music. So even Swami Vivekananda mentioned this, that music can be the highest sadhana for those who understand it. Because if you understand, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, music is a great art. It helps you to raise your consciousness from the gross to the subtle. So this person also listening to the music, seeing the different colors coming out of the prism, his mind always, like the needle, magnetic needle, always used to point to the unity. So in chapter 2nd, then the topic changes. Sri Ramakrishna is talking. Sri Ramakrishna, the Guru in Dakshineshwari, exhibits the state of a Paramahamsa. Now, while talking about sadhu, Sri Ramakrishna, now this is written by M. M is making a comment here. He says, while talking about the sadhu, Sri Ramakrishna exhibits the state of a Paramahamsa. His conduct is childlike. His face beams with laughter, and there is no cloth around his waist. His eyes swim with joy. He was oblivious of the people around him, and he was in a very high state of ecstasy. So Hriday and all used to see that he tied his cloth properly because he was in a ecstatic mood. That is the sign of a Paramhamsa. So Sri Ramakrishna tells Mani now, I heard Vedanta from Totapuri. Totapuri was his guru. And he used to say, Brahman is the reality and the world is an illusion. The magician performs so many magic feats. He produces a mango plant even bearing mangoes. But all his magic is just sleight of hand. Only the magician is real. Now this is how the Vedantists, especially those belonging to the Advait Vedanta, argue or they reason. They said, what is the fun? Many magic shows you can see, but it is the magician who is more important. The magician is real. His magic is as transitory and it vanishes. After the magic show is over, the magic goes away, but the magician remains. So there are different ways where unity is asserted, and somehow this diversity has to be accepted only in the context of unity. If there is unity is firmly entrenched in the mind, then there is no harm in looking at the diversity. So Mani says, now after Sri Ramakrishna's conversation, Mani means it is M only. Our life is like a long sleep. I understand it, but I do not see it correctly. The mind can't even understand the sky. How can that very mind understand the world rightly just by seeing it? So M is now asking a question. He is trying to give his own logic. He says, our life is like a long sleep. I understand it, but I do not see it correctly. The mind can't even understand the sky. How can the very mind understand the world rightly by seeing it? So he's trying to philosophize, and Sri Ramakrishna gives a wonderful answer. He compares, because we see from normal experience, we think these things are so complicated. God has created this complicated world. We don't even understand what this life is. And how can our mind, which is limited, understand the infinite? So it's just expressing. But Sri Ramakrishna says, but there is another way of looking at it. Not being able to see the sky properly, it looks as though it were touching the earth. I mean, if you look at the horizon, it appears, it gives an impression that the sky is touching the earth. How can a man understand rightly when he is delirious with fever? So if a person who is delirious because of fever, he, through his ignorance, he sees different things and speaks different things without any logic, you can excuse him. Because if he is delirious with fever, so all the people who are engrossed in this world, running after these small things, gross things, how can they understand the subtle thing? That is what Sri Ramakrishna is trying to explain to M. And he sings with a sweet voice about the delirious fever of mankind and Dhanvantari. Dhanvantari is the god, is the physician according to the Hindu mythology, he is the one who is the physician. And he says, "O Mother Shankari, O great physician, what delirious fever I suffer in spite of the grace of thy feet." So he's comparing God with a great physician. He says, "You are a great physician, and still I have this fever of the world which is not leaving me. You can easily cure me of this fever." So comparing God, there are so many ways. That is the greatness of Hindu culture. Every profession has been divinized, even a doctor. For example, you see, even the fever, the common example, the common disease has been converted into a spiritual practice. So when you say how to explain the worldly behavior, the attachment to the world, so this song says God is the Dhanvantari. He is the one who can cure us, but yet the fever of the world does not leave us. So you see how a simple thing, a commonplace thing, which happens every time we go to the doctor if we have a fever, but to compare that fever with the feverishness with which we hold on to the world, and compare God to a doctor, a Dhanvantari, the doctor of doctors. Dhanvantari is supposed to be the supreme doctor. So, so, so he says, Thakur sings this song. Actually, I don't know which song this is. Shankari means Durga. Actually, she is supposed to be give birth to all these doctors. And she says, Thakur says that, "Oh great physician, even though I have got Dhanvantari as my physician, yet when the feverishness, which can be compared to the worldliness, comes to me, why does he not cure me of this fever?" Then the song continues. It's a beautiful song. Dasarathi was a great Bengali composer. He says, "This perishable transitory pride of mine is consuming me in its flames. What depraved attachment I have developed for me and mine. Aham and mama." So even this ego is something, as compared the effect of ego on a person, how he is consumed by his own ego. They are like flames. So the poet is using all sorts of imagery to convince the person that what happens, it is something similar, that the flames are consuming you, the fever is there, the doctor is there, but he is not able to cure my fever. The flames are there, they're engulfing me, and I know the reason. It is my ego, me and mine. Me as a personality, mine as all the possessions that I have gathered around me. They are burning me. Their fire is so, I mean, this imagery has been created by this poet. He says that though I know it is the fire is consuming me, burning me, still I cannot rescue myself from this. Then he prays to the Divine Mother Durga, Shankari as she is known. Shankara, and Shankara's the feminine aspect of Shankar is Shankari. So Durga, Shankari is another name of Durga. He says, "How can I sustain my life? My desire for wealth and friends is ceaseless." Desire for wealth is one thing. Desire for friends, that means attachment. So he says, my life is being torn apart by my desire for wealth and friends. The more the number of friends, the more you have to entertain them. And somehow the sadhaka here realizes that this is burning his life. He is as if uh, the attachment of me and mine, that is going on increasing day by day. His friends are increasing, his desire for wealth is increasing. He is not satisfied. That person, sadhaka, says, "I'm not satisfied. Somehow some wealth comes to me, then I feel that I should have more. So I love the company of friends, but I'm not satisfied with that. If I have 10 friends, I want more friends, more and more and more and more. And that me and mine, the circle of me and mine goes on increasing." Then he says, O the bestower of all goodness. He's praying to the Divine Mother Durga. I continue to indulge in all these things, wealth, friends, and all those things, which are illusory. And sometimes I even do wrong things, sinful acts, and so on, even though I know they will one day consume me. The effect of these evil things will one day consume me. But, O Mother, O Shankari, please save me. I am surrounded. There is fever which is consuming the body internally, and the flames are consuming the body from outside. So it's a very, very strong way, a powerful way. I believe that these songs, they were not written through the intellect. If Dasharati, whoever this great saint is, I don't know, like Kamala Kanta, Ram Prasad, this Dasharati has also lot of songs Thakur used to sing. Now these people would have felt the heat of worldly life affecting them. They were perhaps all came from households. They suffered, and then they realized the impermanence of the world, and then somehow by the grace of their guru, they got the Kali mantra or the Durga mantra, and then just prayed to her, pleaded with her, just save me from these flames. So they could literally, I think, feel this word consuming them as if a fever. Otherwise, these words will not come. That is why Sri Ramakrishna used to say, these are not words. This bhakti is not something which you can cultivate through our intellect, but it is feeling. When it is intensified, when the sadhaka, when this Dasharati is feeling that, oh my mother, this delirium, you gave birth to Dhanvantari, who is the master physician, then why do you allow me to be consumed with this fever? This fever is not leaving me. What is that fever? The fever of me and mine, and the pain associated with it. So not only that, that is the internal fever because of the ego, the external fever because of the consequences of that ego, that attachment, which results in big conflagration. A flames are surrounding me, and internally and externally I am burning. Now, can you not try to douse those flames and make me live in peace? And then Dasharati says, my eyes are full of the deep sleep of Maya, and my stomach is filled with the worm of violence. I am going round and round as in a whirlpool of illusory action. Day and night I am feeling distaste for your name. I mean, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when you have typhoid, when you have fever, you lose the taste and you don't feel like eating anything. So the doctor advises you and cautions you that if the taste returns, then you are saved. But if you continue to lose your taste, then you are doomed, because then it is a sign that this typhoid fever or any other fever will not be cured. That is how the doctors of those days used to tell the patients. So somehow they used to say that once the taste returns, then you are safe. So he says, my problem is, nowadays, I mean, Dasharati is genuinely, this poet is asking Mother Durga, somehow I am feeling a distaste for your name. The Guru has given me the mantra, but somehow I don't feel joy in repeating it. Now that is a dangerous sign, because if in that case, I will not be cured of this fever. Just as if the taste does not return, the typhoid patient has very little chance of recovery. So using these wonderful examples, comparing the doctor or to a physician who can cure the maladies of the world, one's guru, and the Divine Mother who is capable of sending Dhanvantari to, Dhanvantari is the god of doctors and physicians. So you are the physician who is controlling all the physicians of the world. So please cure me of this malady. Alas, will I be cured of this malady? Then after Thakur has sung this song, remember it was after ecstasy. He is feeling somehow I think he's trying to induce this feeling in M. Mani is M. And asking him, do you feel like this poet? Do you feel? Of course, M had felt that. M really, in a way, was lucky because he felt his life so tolerable that he had come to Dakshineshwar to commit suicide long ago in 82. 1 year has passed. So now he has found some meaning in life. Maybe has found some medicine to cure his fever. So it is only when you feel like Dasharati felt that, oh mother, why have you um, uh, created a delusion in my mind which has resulted in this kind of fever, the me and mine. So that attachment which has come has resulted in a chain reaction, burning me from inside and outside. So when that feeling comes to the sadhaka and he cries to the mother or he prays to the mother to relieve him of his suffering, that is why they say Vishada Yoga is the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Without Vishada, perhaps Arjuna would not have been humble enough or desperate enough to seek advice from Sri Krishna. So perhaps Sri Krishna knew that now is the right moment to give advice to Sri Krishna, because now he is in a condition. Till now, his ego that he was a strong warrior, he was a powerful general, he could defeat everybody. That strength was actually impeding him from surrendering to the Lord. So that is why Sri Krishna was waiting for an opportune moment. And when he found that due to some strange reason, this strong Arjuna became simply like a helpless child. And in the first chapter, you see he is not even able to lift his Gandiva, his bow and arrow. One who was very strong and ready for the battle becomes as weak as a child. That is because of his attachment, which Sri Krishna points out. His me and mine, my cousins, my relatives, my uncle, my teachers, and all those were in front of him. He was totally confused as to what to do. And that resulted, and plus he was overwhelmed by knowing that they were the people who taught him, his own guru, who taught him the Dronacharya, then Bhishmacharya, all revered people who had trained him. So he's suddenly getting confused, and he feels perhaps the same way as Dasharati feels here, that he is surrounded by these people and a strange kind of vishada. Vishada means depression, due to fear, due to many things put together created that kind of feverishness, that kind of weakness. And he was seeking Krishna's help. He says, I don't know what has happened, but I am not able to fight. So, Sri Ram Krishna is trying to tell that can you for a moment feel that you are in this place, you are in this whirlpool of illusory action. So these songs are very powerful methods. The path of bhakti is no doubt very easy. It has been made easy by the poetic expressions of these great poets like Ram Prasad. That is why if you find in the gospel, Sri Ramakrishna himself has sung more than 72 songs, and each of these songs, they are very, very powerful, emotional, I mean, um, uh, filled with so much of divine emotion that it will create in the minds of a devotee or one who is following the path of bhakti, it will induce a kind of reverence, and perhaps the poet feels or the sadhaka feels here, Dasharati feels that these songs will help somebody who is in my position, who is really troubled by the world, to feel the taste for the divine name and somehow get cured. So he is, as it were, pleading on behalf of the entire humanity to the Divine Mother, said, "O Divine Mother, You have the Dhanvantari as your physician, who who is the lord of all the physicians. So if he cannot help me and cure me of this spiritual fever because of attachment of me on me and mine, aham and mama, then what hope is there for me? I will be destroyed. And whatever little hope was there, if I had repeated your name, because I know it, that repetition of that name, that is what is advised in the path of bhakti, that the Lord's name and the one who is named, Nam or Nami Abhed. The name of the Lord is equivalent to the Lord himself, whether it is the Divine Mother or any other Ishta. So the only way for the solution of our feverishness or the malady which is affecting us both internally and externally is to develop a taste for the name. So M says, I said to Kishori, there is nothing in a box, but two people are trying to snatch it from each other, thinking there is money in it. So he's comparing the situation of an ordinary person or a ordinary person who is running after the transitory things. It is like fighting. He is giving an example. These are very powerful imageries or very powerful examples. He says there is nothing in a box. That means the fights which people have to acquire certain things for which they have no use, it's like an empty box. And thinking, assuming that our problems will be solved, persons fight with each other, try to snatch these things, possessions from each other, not only in the gross sense, but even in the subtle way. Mental battles are fought, egos clash with each other. So all these things happen, and because they firmly believe that possessing certain properties or some money or many things will ensure them. But M is telling they are empty boxes. After all that fight, all you will get is an empty box which is not going to save you. So, Sri Krishna, then he continues, M continues, well, the body is the sole cause of all the troubles. Thinking this, the Jnani says to himself, I would rather give up this pillowcase. Only that will save me. Now, this is not from the point of view of Bhakta. From the point of view of Bhakti, he still feels that his body can get rid of the fever. It's a symbolic way of saying that I have an ailment, but that ailment can be cured. But the only thing that is to be done, that I have to develop a taste for the Lord's name. Whereas the Jnani has a different approach altogether, which Totapuri had. That's why he said he sometimes made fun of Sri Krishna. You are praying to your mother in the temple, but all that is Maya. There is nothing worth praying for. But that is such a difficult path, because in that case, for a Jnani, for a person who wants to practice Advaita, right from beginning he has to say that this body does not exist. It is just like a pillowcase. Only that will save me. But can we really do that? Are we in a position to say that this body is insignificant? The least amount of trouble of the body and the mind, we run to 100 people to help us, to save us. And if that doesn't work, then finally we go to God and pray, ask Him to deliver us, save us, or cure us of that fever. So, but Jnanis, on the other hand, have been told. That is why Sri Krishna says it is a very difficult path, because you have to reject and deny that this is just a pillowcase. Now, how many of us can say that? We are attached to our body. We have to accept the truth that we cannot say just by verbally saying, oh, this body is like a pillowcase. But a Jnani, if he has to be a Jnani, and if he follows the path of Jnana, right from the outset, he has to say that my body is just a pillowcase. I would rather give up this pillowcase. So that is what Totapuri tried to do. But Thakur had a lesson he wanted to teach him a lesson. So Totapuri, when he used to make fun when he developed a serious stomach ailment. In those days, if you had stomach problems, it made your life really miserable. There was no cure. And he was a wandering monk. So he said, after all, I have realized Brahmana. What is this pillowcase? Let me just throw it. So he goes into the Ganga, and strangely, he finds that day there was not enough water to drown. Then he suddenly had a vision of Mother Kali, and then he realized, oh, what a great mistake I was making. And he comes to Sri Krishna, and from that day, he accepts the god or goddess with form, which he was, because he found that even without her will, I cannot even give up this body like a pillowcase, which as a Jnani, he was ready to do. He was ready to do because they live in such a way right from childhood. If you see the wonderful life of Totapuri, who belonged to the Puri sect and had his monastery, he became a monk at the age of, in a very tender age, and the training they get and the type of life they live to get rid of the body consciousness, something unimaginable. They are not allowed to stay under a roof, whether it rains, whether it is hot sun. They have to just stay under the tree, eat whatever they get, not cook any food, just eat whatever they get, and go on moving, not stay in one place. So that is the path of Gyanis. And Sri Krishna appreciated him for that. But in Sri Krishna's life, when he came, Totapuri came, he had come with the intention of just staying there for 3 days. That was a rule. But somehow he continued to stay for several months, attracted by the wonderful divinity of Sri Krishna. And before leaving Dakshina Panchavati, or the place where he was staying, he got convinced that one should not be fanatical in one's own path. Maybe my path is Jnana, but for that reason, I should not say that bhakti is not good. If somebody wants the path and follow the form, God with form, then he should be free to do it. Then when M, who was still at that juncture, M was following the path of Jnana. When Sri Krishna asked him, which path do you prefer? Do you prefer a formless God, a God who is all pervading, the formless God as the Jnanis worship? Then he said, I prefer the formless God. Then he said, okay, that is fine. You follow that sadhana, but don't ever say that those who worship God with form are making mistakes. That would be some kind of exclusiveness, which is not permitted in the sphere of religion. If one is truly spiritual or truly religious, then he has to accept different paths as equally valid paths. Maybe the path and the philosophy behind it may not convince everybody, but that doesn't mean it is wrong. Sri Krishna used to say, if you want to go to Puri, you just have to start. Yes, it is sincerity that matters. Even if you go on a wrong path, there will be somebody to guide you. And finally, maybe after a long time, you will reach your destination. So also, he, in the first or second meeting itself, he told M, you people think that you alone are wise. And you Calcutta people want to teach others what is the truth without knowing the truth yourself. Do you think you have known the truth that you can go and giving uh, advice to other people saying that, oh, you are ignorant, you should not worship the murti or the idol? So Brahmos had that tendency to criticize everybody who worshipped images, who worshipped, who did puja, rituals and other things. So I said, how do you know what is right and who are you to tell them? Have you realized the reality through your own path that you can criticize others? So Sri Krishna immediately stops him. He says, why? This world is a deceptive veil, but it is also called the mansion of joy. So the way you look at it, from the Jnani's point of view, it is a deceptive. It is because they have to impress upon their minds that everything is Maya, everything is transitory. No doubt it is a path. But Sri Krishna says, for a bhakta, for a person who is devoted to the God with form, for him it is a mansion of joy, Majar Kuti, as used to say in Bengali. Maja means joy, divine joy. They love the ecstatic love of God they can develop in their own life. They enjoy the Leela of the Lord. So, why are you trying to say that your point of view that the world is deceptive, everything is, you may have found a path through negation, through neti, you negate. That is a very tough path, but it is also a valid path, according to Sri Ramakrishna. He said, yo, that is also a path. No doubt it is a difficult path, because that makes you, right from the beginning of your sadhana, do everything in your life with the idea that everything is temporary. It is a deception that is trying to trap me and attach me to the gross. So the path of jnana is totally different. But for a bhakta, it is a more natural way of reaching the same goal. He says this whole world belongs to the Lord. So Vishnu is everywhere, just as we saw in the beginning. The monk was saying, the monk who was full of devotion and who considered Sri Ramakrishna as a premi, because he could see that divine love was oozing out of Sri Ramakrishna. So he could recognize, though he refused to read the Bhagavad Gita when worldly people were present, but he loved the company of Sri Ramakrishna. That is what this Nanak was, that saint belonging to the Nanak's path, who lived in Banaras. Sri Ramakrishna visited Banaras with Mathur Babu. Mathur Babu was one who sponsored his tour, and they went within a big group. But Sri Ramakrishna could not enjoy there much, because he found that Mathur Babu was discussing about his property. He found some rich gentleman of the town, and being a rich man, he had no other, even in a holy place, he was discussing, and Sri Ramakrishna, like a child, got quite angry. He didn't care if master has, if Mathur has brought me here, what of that? He is talking worldly things here. He has come to Banaras, let him worship Shiva, let him think of divinity. Even here he is talking of business and making money and his property and all those things, worldly talk. So he was terribly irritated, and he said, you have brought me here to enjoy the glory of this great land of Shiva, the golden Kashi, as he saw. He had so many wonderful visions. And he says here, even in his presence, they used to talk some kind of business deals and other things. So he was upset with Mathur. That is why when he found this Nanak's, that saint who belonged to the Nanak sect, and the way he was trying to see divinity everywhere, as if Vishnu is everywhere. I mean, that was his path, unlike that of Totapuri, who thought the whole world is Maya. But he says, why do you always say that world is full of Maya? You can always say, since it belongs to the Divine Mother or Vishnu or whichever deity one believes in, the personal God, and then his Leela makes this whole world, which may be a deceptive net for those who follow the path of Jnana. But since I am following the path of Bhakti, since somebody else is following the path of Bhakti, like that saint, Nanak saint, Sri Ramakrishna says, why don't you also call, there's another alternative of way of looking at the world, that is a mention of joy. But Mani still, because he had a very bad experience. See, one should remember the context in which this advice is being given. You have to see whom Sri Ramakrishna is giving this advice. You all have to remember that M, when he came to Sri Ramakrishna, had no experience in his life which was worth saying that this experience gave me joy. He was suffering. So even now, after 1 year, after meeting Sri Ramakrishna, he says, but don't you think there is no uninterrupted joy here? Then Sri Ramakrishna agrees with him on this point. He says, true indeed. It is true. I agree with you. But Sri Krishna now is trying to divert this money's attention because he was perhaps too negative in his approach. Because you have bad experiences, don't think that is the only way one can look at the world. If you look at the world from a right perspective as a devotee, then the same world which is full of maya and painful and sorrowful can be converted into a world full of joy, mansion of mirth, as you used to say, a market of joy. So Thakur is now standing in front of the Kali temple. He prostrates before the Divine Mother, and seeing him, M, who did not believe, as Brahmos, they were not supposed to bow down before a image or any temple in any form. But by now, he has been convinced that the path of devotion also is equally valid. So he also does the same, seeing Thakur prostrate before the image. Thakur sits on the floor before the mother on the lower platform in front of the shrine. He is clad in a red bordered dhoti with part of it wrapped around his back and other end over his shoulder. Behind him is the pillar of the Nath Mandir. Mani is seated, M is seated very close to him. Now, M is not stopping the conversation here. He is still trying to argue. He says, if you say that this is a mention of mirth, a mart of joy, I don't see any joy in this world. So he says, if that is so, why should one take up a body at all? I think the body is only for practicing some karma or yoga, karma yoga or action. Who knows what one is doing? It's only brings suffering and tribulation. So he is so much disillusioned with the world, maybe because of prolonged suffering. So many issues. He had a wife who was troubling him, his brother-in-law, and there were many other domestic issues which he was facing. So somehow or the other, he harps on his suffering. And he says, maybe it is our karma. It is a fatalistic attitude. And he says, it is because of karma. I think I am for practicing some karma yoga. I think I had to take this body, but I am not very happy. It only brings suffering and tribulation. But Sri Krishna still see the positivity of Sri Krishna. He says, when a gram falls on a heap of filth, it still sprouts into a gram plant. Sri Krishna, but Mani is still not convinced. He says, so be it. Even then, aren't there 8 bonds? So this conversation shows that no matter how much Sri Krishna is trying, it would have been so tough for Sri Krishna to build up hope, because he has just been coming for 1 year. And after constantly enjoying or getting the holy company of Sri Krishna, M could change his attitude and became a totally transformed person. Sri Krishna is hinting him, I agree, the world is bad, there is suffering, there are so many issues which everybody has to face. But he says, if you plant a gram on a heap of filth, that will grow, it will sprout into a gram plant, whether the conditions are suitable or not. Even if you plant a gram, it will not give rise to a filthy plant. The plant will always give gram. It will sprout into. So the seed, the divinity which is there in you, Sri Krishna is giving a hint. But unfortunately, M doesn't seem to be influenced by that. He doesn't realize what Sri Krishna is hinting at. He says that divinity is within you. And you don't have to worry about, because ultimately, through all the struggles, the gram will finally sprout and a gram plant will grow. It's not that because it has been dropped in filth, the gram plant will grow to become something else. So whatever may be the present position, whatever may be your present position due to the karma, there is a solution if you hold on to God, and that divinity will not die. Sooner or later it will sprout and a gram plant will be created. But still, M is not convinced. So he says there are 8 fetters. Now, what these 8 fetters are and all other things we'll discuss in the next class. But the topic of the next class is very interesting. He says Sachidananda is the Guru. Sachidananda means the infinite Brahman comes in the form of the Guru to loosen these bonds, to clear your ignorance, to clear the doubts, avidya, because of which the asmita and the raga, dvesha, as in Patanjali we discussed. Avidya, ignorance, first ignorance is responsible, avidya is responsible for our other problems like asmita, that is ego, and all the other troubles. So we will stop here and we'll continue. Now M is not yet convinced. He says there are 8 bonds. Sri Ramakrishna accepts that there are bonds, but who said we can't be free from those bonds? By his grace, these 8 bonds can fall off at once. And then he explains and tries to bring some kind of positivity into the life of M. So we'll stop here now, and I don't think we have time for questions. There's one remark somebody has made. Thakur says, Jato mat tato pat. Just like answer to a question could yes be yes and no, both are true. The matter is truthfulness, which will sprout to one. Is that so? Yes, that is what Sri Ramakrishna meant when he said Jato mat tato pat. That means as many paths, so many uh, so many ways to reach the same goal. The goal may appear to be different, but ultimately it will lead you to the same goal. The divinity within will manifest. So that is the meaning. So I'll take your leave now. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.